Hitchcock Psycho, Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn, The Chronicles of Narnia, and Stephen King's worlds. Locke Key has to do with all of the above. How exactly? Well, stay tuned with OSSA Movies to find out. We won't mention the small references and Easter eggs, but we're about to discover the very biggest ones. Let's start with the man who invented this charming and at the same time, horrifying world. Joe Hill, aka Stephen King's son. If this story feels like it was written by a master of horror, that's no surprise, because the man who wrote this story is none other than Stephen King's son. His full name is actually Joseph Hillstrom King. And the coolest thing about him, besides for the fact that he's Stephen King's son, is the fact that he did his best to hide it. Any ideas why? Why did he decide to use a shortened version of his birth name? It's simple. Joe wanted to become a successful writer without using Stephen King's name as a booster. I lacked a lot of self-confidence as a teenager, Hill told The Telegraph in 2016. When I went into writing, I had to know that if someone bought one of my stories, they'd bought it for the right reasons. That is a good story, and not because of who my dad is. That's very commendable. Besides the Locke Key comic series, Joe has written 4 novels and 4 short story collections, so there's no doubt that Hill has a talent for storytelling. I once had a friend who said it would be a grave mistake to go into writing, as I would never be able to escape my dad's shadow, Hill said in the same Telegraph piece. I've always been glad I never listened. For now, we can say that Joe's doing pretty well. He wrote a comic horror book together with Gabriel that received a successful Netflix adaptation. What could be better than that? Perhaps only the fact that both Joe Hill and Gabriel played small cameos in the first episode of the series. Did you miss that? Both creators appeared as paramedics in the scene where Rufus is put into the ambulance. Check it out. Here's Joe and Gabriel having some fun on the set of Locke Key. Cool, isn't it? And this isn't the only iconic cameo in the show you might not know about. Let's stop and talk about that for a while. Tom Savini's cameo. Do you know who this guy is? No? You might not know his name, but you're probably 100% familiar with his horrifying works. This is Tom Savini. He's one of the world's most famous makeup and special effects artists. He has worked on Friday the 13th, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and many, many other iconic horror movies of the 20th century. Though he didn't take part in creating visual effects for Locke Key, Savini played a small part in it. He appeared as the owner of a hardware store where Bode goes in search of skeleton keys. Just so you get the idea, having Savini appear in your horror movie is like Ennio Morricone starring in your western. Simple as that. Tom has had several cameos in such iconic movies as From Dusk Till Dawn, Zombiegeddon, Lost Boys, and dozens more. His appearance is a true love letter to the horror and sci-fi genre. And this isn't the only love letter to the genre. Hitchcock's biggest reference. Hitchcock created some of the most suspenseful movies ever made. And that definitely includes Psycho. Most of you probably haven't seen this movie, and that's why you don't realize what a massive Easter egg is hidden in the design of Locke Key's house. Look at this house. And now look at the house from Hitchcock Psycho, where Norman Bates lived. Don't think that any other explanation is needed here. This is another example of a huge reference to the horror classic in this series. And it seems that the showrunners don't want to hide it at all. Because the first thing that Tyler says as he sees the house is,
"It's bigger than the pictures. It's also a little more Norman Bates."
A 100% homage. Another cool fact about the house from Locke Key is how the designers hide their references in it. This is a good example of what we mean. You probably remember the scene where Bode stares down the well. The camera takes a perfect angle where you can see a ceiling with a hidden key ornament. Such an artistic design proves that the creators are really attentive to the details. And the last one, and probably the most obvious one, is about the concept. It's about the fantasy book that inspired the world of Locke Key most, which is, of course, The Chronicles of Narnia. References to the C.S. Lewis books come up several times in the show. And, frankly speaking, the idea of the show and the whole concept is truly inspired by the world of Narnia. Of course, this is something that can't really be hidden. And Locke Key's showrunner, Carlton Cuse, never tried to hide it. The Narnia series is probably the most important fantasy series that I read as a kid, Cuse told Entertainment Weekly. It's always been a huge influence on me, and I think on Joe Hill as well. I think in some ways we're honoring C.S. Lewis, who really forged the path in this genre of literature that was inspirational to tons and tons of people. True story. Lewis indeed inspired generations of writers and filmmakers with his vision. Though despite others who steal ideas mindlessly, Joe Hill, along with Gabriel Rodriguez and Netflix, have created a new, unique world of horror and fantasy. And if you haven't dived into it, today's the perfect time to do so. Check it out and enjoy. Thank you guys for watching this video. Subscribe to our channel, and most importantly, stay safe and awesome.